Okay. Moving fast.
Good evening. I'd like to open the November 19th, 2013 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Troy. And if Mr. Evans could call the roll, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bloomingdale.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Kaltsunis.
Here.
Mr. McCown.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
Okay, we have 7 members, a full board here tonight, including we have some alternates that are sitting in. We appreciate and welcome them here this evening. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes. And I think before I need to do that, what I'm going to do is for the purposes of for the purpose of introducing our full board to the members of the audience, I'm just going to basically allow the members to introduce themselves, and that way I'm not going to mispronounce anyone's last name. So if we can start over here to the far left.
My name is Dave Lambert.
Ores Calzunes.
Tom Krent.
Glenn Clark, I am the vice chairman, but tonight I'll be sitting as chairman.
Paul McCown.
Bruce Bloomingdale.
Ken Courtney.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes. Would somebody like to make that motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion for members of the board at this time? Hearing none, I believe we're prepared for a vote. Mr. Evans, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Mr. Kaltsunis.
Yes.
Mr. McCown.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Yes.
So at this time, I would like to jump back to something that I should have done at the beginning. I am the vice chairman, so I don't chair meetings on a regular basis. But just we're going to talk a little bit about the procedures here at the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Troy. So it published in the handouts that were at the back or in the foyer here, essentially is the way we operate here. So I'm just going to briefly read through these. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors or peers appointed by City Council to pass judgment on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate hardship or practical difficulty running with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. Our procedures are following. The board will hear the items in the order they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand, and when recognized by myself, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with their name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, i.e. next door neighbor, live behind the property, etc. State whether they are in favor or against the variance request and give the reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. And at the conclusion of public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of this board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or table, which is delaying of the action of the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes of the people sitting in front of you are needed for approval. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to the Oakland County Circuit Court in Pontiac. And there's a number of different areas regarding variance standards, which we're not going to go into at this time. So at this point in time, we do have item 3, approval of the agenda as printed. Are there any questions about the agenda at this time from members of the board? Hearing none, we're going to move into the hearing of cases. And we have item 4A, which is a variance request by Robert A. Chapman regarding 482 Star. And if I could ask Mr. Evans to present the information related to this request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct everyone's attention to the overhead on the screens. The subject property is located at 482 Star, and in the overhead, that is the parcel outlined in red, the red rectangle. This property is located in a residential neighborhood south of I-75 and east of Livernois. Zooming in, the parcel is in the middle of the overhead. It is at the south end of Star at the eastern end of the road. The subject property and property to the north, west, and south are single-family residential use, and the property to the east is multiple family use. It's an apartment complex. Now, this slide is the same aerial with the zoning map overlaid. All the property indicated in yellow is zoned single-family residential, so that's the property to the north, west, and south of the subject property, including the subject property, and the property to the east is zoned multiple family residential. Tonight's request is in order to split a parcel into two parcels. The applicant is requesting a variance from the requirement that any newly created parcels in this single-family residential district have a 60-foot lot width and lot frontage minimum. Now, in this survey provided by the applicant, they've indicated the split line up and down here, separating the property into two parcels. Star is at the north or the top of this drawing, and the parcel on the left, as proposed, will have a lot width and a lot frontage of 50 feet. Now, the zoning ordinance requires a 60-foot lot width, so he needs a 10-foot variance to both those standards. I'll entertain any questions that my board members may have.
Are there any questions of the board? Hearing none, I will ask the petitioner and his or her representatives to come forward to the podium. And please, as I indicated earlier, state your name, your address, and your relationship to the property. And if there are multiple speakers, if you can all do the same, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Bebo, P10778. My address is 1870 South Hammond Lake Drive, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, 48302. I am here representing Mr. Robert Chapman as his attorney in place of Steve Adams, who had a conflict, and so I was glad to step in on behalf of Mr. Chapman. With regard to the survey that you have before you in relation to, and I'm assuming you all have a copy of the document that was filed by Steve Adams on his statement of practical difficulty. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that you do have that, because
That was in our board packet. sir.
Okay, and it's part of the public record. I want to make one correction. It's apparently a typographical error. On that statement of practical difficulty, about the third paragraph down, where what petitioner is proposing, he has 4 columns. He's got the area, width, and side setbacks. The next column is the minimum under the ordinance. And then he's got Lot A and Lot B. That first Lot A should be Lot B. So I would like to make that correction. And then the Lot B should be Lot A. So that we're making reference to those documents so that that's clarified. And my apologies for that error.
Just if you could stand at ease for just 1 second, sir. Mr. Evans, would that be, according to my computer, page 14, is that right? Or page 13?
Yeah, I showed us page 13 as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. I also have some handouts that I will hand out to you, but let me just briefly describe what we've got here. And could you put on the overhead aerial showing all the lots with the red, not that, the previous one. Yes. This is 1,100, on lot 482, there's 1,100 square foot home, which is about probably 50 years old. It's in need of some updating, and my client would like to upgrade this property. And in terms of looking at the finances of upgrading it, and I realize that shouldn't be looking at finances with regard to variances. But this lot, as you can see, is 117 feet wide, and so it's larger than most of the lots in the subdivision. And what he is proposing to do is to have one lot which meets the requirements of the subdivision and the zoning, and then provide another buildable site which is basically in character with the neighborhood to a degree. And if you would, Mr. Evans was kind enough to provide a survey that he attached, it's called the Parcel Variance Report, which is the last, and I think it's the last 3 pages of your agenda, not the agenda item, but the packet that you got. And you will note that in that report, he concludes on the summary on the last page, indicating that the number of parcels in the area, there's 81, the average mean or width is 70 feet, and the standard deviation being 20. Now, that means that this is not that unusual. There are other 50-foot lots and lesser than 50-foot lots in this subdivision that makes this not totally unusual. But I think the other thing that I would like to bring to the attention is that if we were to include other lots in the area, can I approach and
If you can withhold your comments, if you're going to pass something up, please, if you want the board to see, please go ahead and do so. But for the public record, it's recorded at the microphone. So maybe the gentleman can help you and you can continue your comments.
hand one out to each? Give one to them, one to everyone. Yeah, what Mr. Chapman is handing out at this time is an overhead aerial of it's a map of the area showing the lot sizes. And then the next, I'll wait till you. So referring to the first page, and I've marked it Exhibit 1, this shows the area of the property, and I've highlighted Mr. Chapman's property up there on Star Road in the yellowish green color. And I've also, you'll note, highlighted lots on Robinwood. Now, there is no lots on Robinwood which were included in the parcel variance report that Mr. Evans prepared. And I can understand why, because his variance report extended to the west, because that seems to be the orientation of that neighborhood. However, many people enter this neighborhood where the Chapman property is through Robinwood. And I just wanted to point out that all those colored lots on that Exhibit 1 indicates on the north side of Robinwood there are 18 homes on 50-foot lots. And then on the south side of Robinwood, there are 19 homes on 50-foot lots. And this is also an area that's zoned the same as Mr. Chapman's property, minimum lot width of 60. And on the next Exhibit 2, the next page of that handout, that just shows, and I don't know what they call this, but I got this off the city's map records. They show that, the outline of the houses on those lots on both the north and south side of Robinwood. And then the last sheet is just an overhead aerial which kind of shows there's a lot of trees there. You can't see all the houses on the south side. But in sum, there are 37 houses along Robinwood there that I believe show that 50-foot lots in this area is very reasonable. In fact, that's part of the community, and that would obviously then up the variance issue regarding the report that Mr. Evans presented to you. Although his report does support our position, adding these lots more than adds supplemental information and ammunition for our request for the variance. So what we're saying is that right now, this lot is oversized for this community. And to split this lot would bring it into more conformity with the development in the community. And just let me kind of review. And what Mr. Chapman wants to do is upgrade these properties and to hopefully build homes that are similar to those that are located at 2339, 51, and 63 Kirkton, which is right down the street from this property. So the City of Troy summary variance report includes 81 parcels which have an average lot width of 70 feet and a standard deviation of 20 feet. Means that the 65% of the lot widths fall between 50 and 90 feet. Of the 81 parcels in the subject neighborhood, 24 are less than 60 feet minimum lot size. The subject parcel at the eastern end of the Star Street, which is dead ends, front the property line. This property also abuts multiple family residential, which is another indication that this property is different from many of the other properties in the area. Subject properties, and there's a chain link fence there that separates the property, and there's a parking lot right on the other side of the property. The character of the neighborhood has been changing to a greater density over the years, in part driven by higher land costs on a square foot basis. And I think those homes on Kirkton kind of support that position. Allowance of the requested split would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It would directly impact few, if any, neighboring parcels. Allowing the split would give rise to parcels within a one standard deviation, and if you add the lots on Robinwood, it would be a lot greater in our position, in more support of our position. An additional home on the dead-end portion of Star Street should not impair the adequate supply of air or light or surrounding parcels, nor increase congestion of the fire hazard. The additional investment in the neighborhood should enhance the value of surrounding properties and be an addition to the neighborhood. Mr. Chapman is here. He's able to answer any questions you may have. If you have any, that's all. That's our presentation.
Thank you very much. Are any questions of the board? I see Mr. Courtney.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I have a question. You said that he plans to build houses.
Correct.
Two.
No.
Okay.
Well,
If he plans to build two houses, split the parcel right in the middle instead, and we won't have a very, very small lot.
I'd have to demo
no. Let
the
me.
house.
He does not. He's not going to demo the house on lot 112B on the map.
Okay, so he plans to build one house. not-
But he's going to expand that house.
Yeah.
Probably going to double the size of it, and we're going to tear down the garage, which is on the lot line.
If he doubles the size of it, it'd be much better on a large lot.
Well,
Personal opinion.
well,
Okay. Any other questions for the board? Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, just maybe a clarification. You had indicated on the statement of practical difficulty that there was a mix-up in the two lots. Lot A and Lot B should actually be switched around on that one page there, as far
Oh,
as,
yeah.
not on the map, but on your submission of the...
Correct.
Okay. On the second page of that statement, I think this also needs to be switched around. It says the chain link fence would be adjacent to the side setback of Lot A. Should that be Lot B?
yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Any other board members? I do have one question. I used to live in this neighborhood, that particular neighborhood, for many years, and on Van Cortlandt, over by Robinwood. So I'm very familiar with Robinwood. I used to walk my dog on that street every day, unless it was snowing or raining. And you say in the third from bottom paragraph that the character, quoting you directly, or your associate, Mr. Adams, directly, the character of the neighborhood has been changing to a greater density over the years, in part driven by higher land costs on a square foot basis. I have to take exception with that since I lived in that neighborhood. I have not seen a wholesale change to a greater density, or I take this to the greatest extreme here and insert, multifamily cluster homes or anything of that nature. And in fact, Robinwood, which you reference in this handout, if you ever look at those homes, which I'm not sure if you've actually been in the neighborhood or you just produced this, that's obviously available, like you mentioned, on the city's website and so forth. Those homes are very old compared to really over where Star is. Maybe there's a 10-year difference, maybe even 15 years. So just because they have smaller lots, I would take exception with the phraseology of greater density. And I think you're referencing the one home that you did in your paperwork, that there has been some change. I don't know that really bears much weight in your request. So maybe you want to comment on that. Once again, I think this particular neighborhood, there are some smaller lots and there are some bigger lots, but I don't know that there's been any wholesale change happening for any period of time.
Well, he wants to speak, but let me just comment. The neighborhood is a beautiful, lovely neighborhood. It's got that park at the end. It's got the school. I mean, it just kind of reminds me of when I grew up in Detroit. But I think what we're seeing is, like on Kirkton, they split it into 3 lots and are putting bigger, larger, more expensive homes on these lots. That's, I think, what Mr. Adams' comment was, that he might want to mention.
That's obviously was 1 lot. They turn it into 3. That's a greater density right there. But more important than just the density, it's the quality of home that's being built. They're trying to upgrade. And obviously, that's what's in demand for that community, because every one of those houses sold before they were completed. Every house was sold, and that's what made me go after this variance. They were all sold. So that's telling me that people want to live in that neighborhood, but they want that 2,400, 2,300, 2,500 square foot home. They don't want to buy my 1,100 square foot house. And to answer your question, I will not build a 2,700 square foot house there if I don't have another one next to it, because they're going to go, I'm the only one like this. That's what made those houses sell on Kirkton. There was 3 of them right there, bang, bang, bang. Okay, now they see that community, that area is starting to all be that way, to be rejuvenated, basically. So it won't help me to put up I already have the layout, a 2,700 square foot home, a 5-bedroom home on Star, if I don't have something next to it or real close to it that says, here. And that's what's going to bring in, first off, more tax revenue, but more important than that, families, larger families, people that want, I think all 3 of the Kirkton ones are at least 4-bedroom homes. And that's what they want. And I want a 3-bedroom outdated house.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Just, for the record, we can't consider side benefits to the community about extra taxes or extra children into the school district or what have you, but I appreciate your comments.
I wouldn't have even applied for this at all, except when I seen that happen.
I understand. Okay, I think went through the board, and so if you gentlemen can have a seat, we are going to open the public hearing. Did you have one more comment, sir?
No, I thought
okay.
he had a question.
Well, again, you already asked
Right.
that. It doesn't have anything to do with
Our decision.
the financial end of it.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Lambert.
Thank you. And it's kind of a follow-up to Mr. Courtney's question. I think, by and large, you've shown a lot of the positives to this lot split. The concern I have is the board needs to find a practical difficulty with what you're asking us for. And it looks like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that the practical difficulty is the existing house on Lot B, is it? That you don't want to make any changes to that. If you were to demolish that and start over from scratch, then the lot split wouldn't be as big of an issue. Is that essentially what the practical difficulty is?
It would cost too much then.
If you're going to speak, sir, you're going to have to step forward to the microphone for the public record.
If I had to split, if I had to demolish the home, it would just be too much.
Costly, okay.
Although I would still probably spend over $100,000 on that home to do what we need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So now at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing on this particular matter. And if any member of the community would like to come forward or address this issue and give us your thoughts, and just understand you're going to make comments, and the board isn't necessarily going to respond, but you can come to the microphone. Once again, please state your name, address, relationship to the property. Good evening.
Thank you. My name is John Benarski. I own the house immediately to the west of the property in question. I live at 456 Star. And I do understand where Mr. Chapman is coming from. I understand the practical difficulty. My question is, what is the actual hardship? And when it comes to the houses in question that are shown on the left over there, the three on Kirkton, those are done on legal size lots. They were not done with a variance. You did answer the question about those on Robinwood being the older homes of smaller lots done at a time when the smaller lots were done. That was a question that I would have had, but you answered that. I'm not entirely opposed to Mr. Chapman's idea, other than the fact that, you know, if he's going to give the idea or the example of his home at 1,100 square feet to the east being too small for the house that's being built, my house to the west being 900 square feet, a lot smaller, and, you know, I would, you know, question, you know, what would that mean to the construction of this new house on the new lot of 50 feet. And then his lot being 117 feet wide, I happen to have a lot of 118 feet wide. And if I found myself in the same, you know, set of circumstances as Mr. Chapman, that I wanted to do the same thing, I find myself basically, you know, like would have to come before the board to do the same thing. My house was built in the 20s, and it's in need of upgrading and whatnot. And I have a pretty big lot, as most of the houses in the subdivision happen to be, and the lot being proportionate to most of the lots in the neighborhood as it is now. So if the time would come where, you know, like I wanted to either like rebuild upon my lot as he wants to actually add a house to his, I would be compelled to maybe do the same thing, or, you know, work with Mr. Chapman and come to some kind of consensus between our two lots and have something that's legitimate and, you know, like by the law, by the zoning, you know, laws that would actually work out, and we wouldn't have to come before because everything would be within the parameters.
I'm sorry, sir, you're out of order. Thank you.
So
Please proceed, sir.
So actually, basically, that's all I have to add. I mean, you know, my main question is, like, what would be the hardship? The home that's there, I mean, this is just my opinion, it has come a long way, and your prior tenants have done tremendous improvements to that place. That lot that is in question, the 50-foot lot, was basically scrub, you know, overgrown trees and whatnot, and the construction equipment was brought in to, you know, improve it considerably. It's, you know, very nice the way it is. To put a home in there, like right now, I mean, it's definitely up to you guys to decide, you know, whether it would work for the community or not. So that's basically all I have to say right now.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for this gentleman? Okay, if not,
Otherwise, you are willing to sell a part of your property, that way you accommodate him?
I would be willing to work within reason, absolutely. I mean, I'm not to use the cheap term of like everybody has a price, but I mean, within reason, absolutely. I mean, primarily because my house is in, need of upgrades, and I'm kind of hesitant to do it because, I mean, I would be willing to build upon my lot as it is now, and I'm not trying to infringe upon, Bob's variance request here, but it would be more practical, like, if he wants to use the improvements or the building of this house to improve upon the existing structure, I understand that. I would kind of come from the same, I guess, from the same point of view right there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would there, anybody else would like to address the board? Yes, sir, please come forward. Once again, state your name, address, relationship to the property. Thank you.
Kurt Hahn. I'm actually at 473 Star, which is right across the street from the property in question.
Okay.
My only concern is with the street being a no outlet street and the way the traffic is, there's going to be more, another house, if there's a 4-bedroom, 3-4 more cars, there's only parking on one side of the street. And it's the same side, unfortunately, as the mailboxes. So trying to park and not have the mail people already leave me notes for parking too close. My concern is I've also had my car hit 3 times coming from that property in question. It's just the concern of being on a no outlet street and with more congestion is my biggest concern, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Any questions for this gentleman? Okay, if you could have a seat, please. Thank you, sir. And at this point, seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for any other further comments, interaction with our support staff from the city, or a motion. Is there anyone who would like to? Mr. Lambert.
Just as a question for Mr. Evans, and this question may be totally off base, and I have no idea if the petitioner would be open to it, but as one way of addressing the size of Lot A, is it possible for that lot, instead of being a rectangle, to be made into more of an L shape so that you at least have a little bit more equivalency between the 2 lots as far as their sizes? Is that something that, number one, city ordinance allows, and number 2, that this board would be able to consider as a possible way forward?
You're asking if the lot to the west could be wider?
Well, no, at the top being kept the same way, but at the bottom more or less coming out as an L, so that you take some of that property away from Lot B and give it to Lot A that way?
I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that would preclude something like that. That's a possibility, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members?
I've got just a couple
Mr. Craig, yes.
I can see how the applicant is certainly qualifies for letter E in our standards, which is it won't be harmful or alter the essential character of the area, won't impair adequate supply of light, air, et cetera, that their attorney already mentioned. The only thing I'm having a bit of difficulty with is Part A, is that the exceptional characteristics of the property for which the variance is sought make compliance with dimensional requirements substantially more difficult than would be the case for the great majority of properties in the same zoning district. It says characteristics of the property which shall be considered include exceptional narrowness, shallowness, smallness, irregular shape, topography, vegetation, or other similar characteristics. I understand that quite a few of the properties in that neighborhood are smaller than 50 foot. I'm just trying to find out what is the characteristic of this particular property that causes this practical difficulty or hardship to the person. I like Mr. Lambert's suggestion. That would be in conjunction with Mr. Courtney's idea. That would make both lots in the front, and that's again probably should ask Mr. Evans that. Is that how we gauge the width, is by the front of the property?
Lot width is measured at the front setback line in this district.
Of the building?
The back of the book.
Of the building or of the property?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Is that width measured from the, is the width of the lot measured at the, let's call it the easement area of, where the street easement, or is it measured at the building, the
Well,
width of the lot?
I think the safest way to say that is the minimum front yard setback is 25 feet. 25 feet south of the front property line, we would draw a line parallel to the front property line, and that would be the lot width. Now, there's no necessarily a requirement that the house be up to that 25 foot. They could have it further back if they wanted.
And in that case, what Mr. Lambert's suggestion would to say, well, that width would have to go all the way back 25 feet. I'm trying to make it work. I'm just having a little bit of a stumbling with the practical difficulty. I'll just leave it up to other board members to comment, see how they feel.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes, as far as the widths right now, this would be the smallest, 50 foot would be the smallest in the area, except for one parcel at 424 Star. The other two parcels at 440 Star, there are two parcels there, they at the present time have to be considered as one lot. So there are two there that are less. But there's one lot smaller than 50 foot. All the others are over 50 foot. This would be the second smallest buildable lot. I think possibly what Mr. Lambert has suggested might be worth considering, but otherwise, I think this is just another attempt to improve the finances and claim it's a hardship. Financial hardships are true, but they're not for us to consider.
Thank you. Is there a comment here? Mr. Lambert?
My suggestion would be if the majority of the board are willing to do it, and if the petitioner is willing to do it, is to postpone this until our next meeting and allow city staff to work with the petitioner to see if they could come up with some type of a plan that would accommodate what we've been talking about, which was some kind of an exchange between the two lots. That way, at least we would be addressing the fact that there'd be a little bit more equality between the two property lots. So I don't know whether the petitioner is willing to work with staff on that or not, or if a majority of the board would like to give them the time to work on it.
Okay. That's Mr. Lambert's opinion. Does anyone else have a similar or different opinion? I would just interject that I think to Mr. Courtney's comment and others as well, Mr. Crenn, I believe, as well, that it's not really, we certainly can't consider a financial hardship, but a financial hardship is not a financial hardship. A financial hardship is a financial want. And I don't see the hardship here, since we certainly can't consider the finances. So I would be in support. In fact, before Mr. Lambert made that comment, I was thinking about perhaps proposing that. I don't know the circumstances as far as the petitioner's desire to move forward, as far as now that we're moving towards winter, but the fact is I think that might resolve itself towards perhaps securing my vote in the future. I don't know that I could support this request at this time. So if there's a formal motion to be made by someone for a postponement, could be made. Mr. Courtney?
Yes, I would. I'd also think the petitioner should consider talking to the neighbor to see if there's something they could work out that way. In the meantime, though, I would move to postpone this item till next meeting.
I believe we have to make it to a date certain. Is that correct, Mr. Evans? So December, the stated December meeting. Is there a second? Sorry, you're out of order. This is for a board discussion now, sir. If there is a second, we have an active motion.
I'll second.
Okay, that's been seconded. Is there discussion amongst the board members now? Mr. Evans.
December 17th.
December 7th, 2013. Mr. Evans.
If the board is done discussing, so just so staff understands as well, because we anticipate possibly being contacted by the applicant, One concern of the board mentioned tonight by Mr. Lambert and possibly agreed to by some of the other board members was more of an equality in lot area?
Correct.
Okay, I see Mr. Lambert nodding.
I believe
That
so.
was where I was going, yes, yeah.
Is that, Mr. Crenton, is that what your thought?
Yes, my thought too. I mean, I couldn't support this as is this variance because there is no physical hardship. There's lot sizes, I mean, the lot is virtually a rectangle. There's no narrowness, there's no angles. It has to go with the land, with the property, not with his finances. I would be in favor of postponement or deny.
Okay. And if it is, if the motion is successful, I'm sorry, you're out of order, sir. If the motion is successful, then it come back before us, then we can consider any changes to the paperwork or request and/or talk directly to the petitioner, also to Mr. Evans as well. So is there any other discussion at this time? Hearing none, Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Thank you. Mr. Courtney?
No.
Mr.
I'm
Kaltsunis?
saying no based on the fact that I just heard somebody suggest 2 months.
No.
I think that could be done administratively, so I believe.
If they want to postpone it, if the board postpones it to December and they need more time, we could do that administratively and just postpone them to January. We could just do that.
Okay, in that case, yes.
Okay. Mr. Kaltsunis?
Yes.
Mr. McCown?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Okay, that, the motion for postponement to the future is approved, and we understand that the petitioner and his representative would be speaking to the city administration on this important issue. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Absolutely. We do now move on to, and of course, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your opinions. They were very important to us. Item number 5, communications regarding the zoning board. And then, of course, I'm going to call upon our Assistant City Attorney. She has an important communication to share with us as well. So we saw in our board packet, there is the 2014, Zoning Board of Appeals meeting schedule. And of course, action by the board is not required at this time, but it's good. I like getting this way in advance so I can insert it into my schedule before I forget when the new year turns around. Are there any comments about the schedule? Concerns? Okay. And then, of course, we can call on our counsel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm handing to everyone a memo that the legal department prepared for your consideration. I apologize that it was late. Ms. Bloom did not have a chance to sign off on it before 5 o'clock today. But the next meeting, you're going to be receiving communication requesting an interpretation of the zoning ordinance. It's not something that happens pretty regularly. I think, Mr. Krent, you may have been the only person who was involved the last time there was interpretation, and you weren't on the board, but with the Monster Garage. So this memo is informational for you at this point. It sort of outlines what your authority is, where the authority is derived from you to interpret the zoning ordinance, what the standards are, what the procedures will be. The details are not in there really. They'll be gone. They'll be presented at a public hearing next month. But because it's something a little unusual, we thought it would be instructive for you to have it ahead of time. So if you have any questions before the next meeting, feel free to contact me or Lori Bloom was my boss.
Thank you very much. And of course, you have Ms. Dufresne's name on the document, and of course, you can just contact her at the city administration office here. And now we move on to item 6, which is miscellaneous business. Are there any other items to be brought before us? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
have
Mr. Lambert.
one informative item. I don't know if any of the other members or any city staff went over today. They had an I-75 aesthetics workshop over at the community center where they're gathering public input on changes to the area around the proposed expansion of I-75. And I know it's not necessarily within the purview of this board. I think it'd be worthwhile for people to give their input, especially as it relates to some of the planning issues in the Big Beaver Corridor project. So hopefully, like Mr. Krent, as being a member of the Planning Commission, will be asked to give some input on that, because this might be our last chance for a long time before we can have improvements made to the I-75 corridor that reflects the growth of Troy since the interstate was originally constructed back when Troy was primarily farmland. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Mr. Krent.
Just to follow up with Mr. Lambert, I went to that workshop today and I talked to Sue Data. She's the senior project manager for that project. And although that workshop was from 1 today until 7, and here it is at 8:17, it's done, because she's still looking for comments, I would suggest, if anyone's interested, to contact Sue. I'll spell it as D-A-T-T-A. I'm not going to give out her phone number or her email, but she is with the State of Michigan Department of Transportation, and if you'd like to have input for that I-75, and they are really doing a good job of getting input and providing good solutions. The only interchange that wasn't addressed was the one at Big Beaver and I-75, which has a crossing of traffic on the entrance and exit, which is, I consider, a little nerve-wracking. The other ones have all the nerve-wracking parts from Madison Heights all the way up to Auburn Hills have been cured, except ours. I'm going to suggest a way to do that. It may not be in their budget, but I'm going to suggest it anyway.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And any other board members? Mr. Porton, you have some papers in your hand. Do you want to share? No. Okay. I would just like to, before, I don't know if it would be appropriate here or we can just move right into public comment, but I do have just a quick comment. Mr. Lambert, who's been a longtime former councilman here in the city of Troy, did very distinguished career representing the constituents across our city, and now a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. He just lost his mom just a few days ago, and so of course I think I speak for our entire board that our condolences are extended to you and your family at this important time. And are there any other public comments at this time? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Happy